Welcome, my friends, to a space where reality is not accepted as it appears, but reshaped by the power within you. If you are part of the Neville Manifestation membership, you already know this is not just content, this is transformation. And tonight, we go deeper, beyond limitation, beyond logic, into the truth that what you assume, you become. What if everything you've ever called impossible was never a fact, but a decision you made in a moment of pain? What if the dream you buried, the life you stopped believing in, is not gone, but simply waiting for you to see it differently? Tonight, I'm not here to motivate you. I'm here to challenge the very reality you've accepted. Because the truth is, the only thing standing between you and everything you desire is the story you keep telling yourself about why it can't happen. Good evening, my friends. I want to begin tonight by asking you something, and I want you to truly sit with it. Not as a casual thought, not as something you brush past, but as a real question meant for you in this exact moment. What have you quietly given up on? I'm not talking about something you let go of because it no longer mattered. I mean the desire that still lives inside you, but you buried it because it hurt too much to keep hoping. The dream you stopped allowing yourself to want. The healing you no longer believe in. The relationship you no longer imagine. The life of freedom you once pictured, but slowly convinced yourself was meant for someone else. Someone with better luck, better timing, better circumstances. Bring that one thing to mind. Don't turn away from it. Stay with it for a moment, because tonight I want you to look at it from a completely different perspective. What if the only thing standing between you and that desire isn't your past, your situation, or fate itself, but one simple word: impossible? And that word, as powerful as it feels, doesn't exist anywhere outside the mind that believes it. Let's understand what impossible really means. It's not a fact about reality, it's only a reflection of your current state of awareness. It's a label created by the assumptions you hold and the identity you're operating from right now. From where you stand, something may seem out of reach, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It simply means you are looking at it from a position where it appears unreachable. Think of the horizon. You can't reach it from where you are, but that doesn't mean there's nothing beyond it. The moment you move, the horizon shifts. The limitation wasn't real, it was based on your position. This is exactly how consciousness works. Anything you've ever called impossible is only impossible from the mindset you're currently in. Change that state, and what once felt unreachable becomes natural, even inevitable. Consciousness doesn't recognize the word impossible. It operates on one principle, and it never fails. What you assume to be true, you experience. If you assume limitation, you live limitation. If you assume something cannot happen, your life reflects that belief. But if you assume something is already done, truly accepted deep within you, then it must show up in your reality. It doesn't matter what your current situation looks like. It doesn't matter if it seems unrealistic or contradicts everything you see around you. Consciousness doesn't judge, doesn't hesitate, and doesn't play favorites. It simply mirrors your inner state. Let me share something with you. A woman once came to me in a condition that was almost beyond words. Her son had been missing for 3 years. There were no answers. The authorities had stopped searching. The people around her had gently begun encouraging her to move on, even though no one ever said it directly. She wasn't emotional anymore. That stage had passed. What remained was emptiness. The kind that comes after hope has been stretched for too long. She asked me, "What can I do? Everyone says I need to accept reality." And I told her something that sounded harsh, maybe even unbelievable in that moment. The only reality you need to accept is that your son is alive, safe, and on his way back to you. She looked at me in disbelief. "You don't know what happened to him," she said. And I replied, "You're right, I don't. But I do understand how consciousness works." I told her this: if you can imagine your son coming home, if you can feel that moment as real as if it's happening now, then that experience must unfold in your world. I gave her a simple practice. Every night before sleep, she was to hear him unlocking the door. Feel his presence. Imagine hugging him. Smell the familiarity. Hear the conversation they would have when he returned. She had to live in that moment internally so fully that his absence felt unreal and his return felt certain. 6 weeks later, she contacted me. Her son had been found. He had been living in another state after an accident caused memory loss. He didn't even know who he was. But suddenly his memory came back, completely and clearly, and he reached out. He was coming home. I'm not telling you this story to impress you. I'm telling you because it reveals something that's easy to accept as an idea, but very difficult to apply when life feels overwhelming. There are no impossible situations. There are only beliefs you haven't been willing to release. Now think about this carefully. Why do people struggle to manifest what they believe is impossible? It's not because they don't want it enough. Some people want something so deeply it consumes them, and still, nothing changes. It's not because they don't try. Many people visualize every day, repeat affirmations, and follow every method they can find. The real reason is much simpler. They are trying to create a new reality while still holding on to the belief that it can't happen. They sit down to visualize, but beneath that image is a quiet voice saying, "This probably won't work. My situation is different. It's too late. Too much has happened." And that underlying belief is stronger than anything they try to imagine. Because consciousness doesn't respond to surface effort. It responds to your true assumption. If deep down you believe something is impossible, then that is exactly what your life will continue to show you. Not because reality is fixed, but because your state is. This is why I say this with complete clarity. You cannot experience a different outcome while remaining in the same mindset that denies it. You must shift into the version of yourself for whom this is already normal. Not someday, not gradually, but now. You don't work your way into it, you step into it through assumption. You begin to live as the person who already has what you desire, even before there is any visible proof. That is the shift. That is where everything changes. There was a man who had been told something no one ever wants to hear. After a severe spinal injury, every medical expert agreed on one conclusion: he would never walk again. 2 years passed in a wheelchair, with no progress, no hope offered, and no expectation of recovery. Then he encountered these teachings, and something within him shifted. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It didn't happen overnight. It was quiet, almost fragile at first. But he made a decision that changed everything. He refused to let his current condition define what was possible for him. Each night, as he drifted into sleep, he entered a different reality. He didn't imagine walking as a distant dream or something that might happen someday. He experienced it as if it were already true. He later explained it to me in a way I'll never forget. He said he didn't just picture himself walking. He felt the ground under his feet, sensed his muscles moving, experienced the freedom of a body that worked perfectly. It became so real to him that waking up in the wheelchair sometimes felt like the illusion. The people around him didn't understand. His family worried. His doctors questioned his mental state and suggested therapy. But he stayed consistent. He stayed loyal to what he was experiencing within himself. After about 8 months, something unexpected began. A slight tingling in his legs. Then sensation returned. Slowly, movement followed where there had been none. 18 months after he began, he stood up and walked. From a medical perspective, it didn't make sense. They called it a rare, unexplained recovery. But he knew exactly what had happened. He had accepted as true what everyone else rejected. He stayed with that assumption until it became more real than his physical condition. And eventually, the outer world had no choice but to reflect it. This is the law in action. Now listen carefully, because this is where most people misunderstand everything. Manifesting what seems impossible is not about pushing through obstacles. It's not about fighting against reality. It's about rising into a state of being where those obstacles no longer exist. There is a huge difference between trying to make something happen and living as if it already has. One person is constantly struggling, trying to fix, change, or overcome what's in front of them. The other has simply shifted into a version of themselves where the outcome is already normal. The first person is battling the wall. The second person is already standing on the other side. You cannot force your way into the life you want. You cannot struggle your way into fulfillment. The only way is through assumption, by doing something that feels completely backwards to the logical mind. You begin acting internally as if it has already happened before there is any physical proof. That's what it means to truly believe you have received. Not that you will receive it, not that you're working toward it, but that it is already done. From the level of consciousness, everything already exists. There is nothing to create. Every version of life you can imagine is already there. Your desire isn't waiting to be formed. It's waiting for you to step into it. Let me share another example. There was a young man who worked as a cleaner. No degree, no connections, no financial support, and no entry point into the industry he dreamed of. Yet he had one clear desire: to become a film director. Everyone around him looked at his situation logically and came to the same conclusion. It wasn't realistic, it wasn't possible. But he understood something most people hear and ignore. There is a difference between thinking about what you want and thinking from it. Thinking about it sounds like this: I want to be a director. Maybe one day I'll get there. I'm trying to make it happen. Thinking from it is completely different. I am a director. This is who I am now. What I'm doing at the moment doesn't define me. It's temporary. He made that shift internally, and everything started to change. Not instantly in the outer world, but in how he moved through it. He began noticing opportunities he had never seen before. He spoke differently, carried himself differently, and found himself in conversations and environments that aligned with his new identity. When you truly change how you see yourself, your entire experience of life shifts with it. The world may look the same at first, but you are no longer the same person moving through it. And because of that, new paths begin to open. Within 3 years, not decades, not through luck, he wrote, produced, and directed a film that received recognition at multiple festivals. This wasn't a coincidence. It wasn't a special exception. It was the natural result of a sustained assumption. What you consistently accept as true will eventually take form. Now, I want to address something I know many of you are thinking. The stories you've heard tonight about the missing child, the physical recovery, the impossible reconnection, these aren't small things. These are situations that logic, science, and experience all label as impossible. And maybe part of you is saying, that might work for them, but my situation is different. Let's be clear about that thought. That belief that your case is the exception is the very thing holding you where you are. It's not your past, it's not the facts, it's not the time that has passed or the people involved. It's the quiet decision that your situation cannot change. Consciousness doesn't evaluate your circumstances. It doesn't decide who deserves a miracle and who doesn't. It simply reflects what you are being. If underneath everything, you believe your situation is beyond change, then that is exactly what will continue to show up. Not because it's true, but because it's what you're holding as true. So the real question isn't whether something impossible can happen. The real question is this: are you willing to become the version of yourself for whom it is already normal? Because that shift, that identity, that inner decision, that is the entire process. And what does that actually look like in daily life? It's not just what you do before sleep, although that matters. It's not just how vivid your imagination is. It's who you are being throughout your day, in the small, unnoticed moments, in your reactions, your thoughts, your quiet assumptions. There was a woman who hadn't spoken to her daughter in 15 years. The separation was complete. No communication, no connection, nothing but distance and pain. She chose to step into a different reality internally. She began imagining conversations with her daughter. She felt the warmth of their relationship as if it had already been restored. She experienced the closeness again in her mind so vividly that it started to feel natural. She told me something remarkable. There were moments when she would instinctively reach for her phone to call her daughter, and then pause, remembering they weren't in contact yet. Not yet. Notice the difference in that. Not never again. Not it's over. Just not yet. That small shift in language reveals everything about her state of mind. She wasn't seeing the separation as permanent. She was viewing it as temporary from the perspective of someone who already had the relationship back. And that is the state where change begins. For a long time, nothing seemed to shift on the outside. Life looked exactly the same. But internally, something profound was happening. With every imagined conversation, with every moment she allowed herself to feel the reality of being reconnected, she was changing. She was no longer someone wishing for reconciliation. She was becoming someone who already lived in that reality. In her mind and heart, it wasn't a distant hope anymore. It felt like something that had already happened, something inevitable, just not yet visible. And then one day, quietly and without any dramatic build-up, it showed up. The phone rang. Her daughter was on the other end saying, "Mom, I don't know why, but I can't stop thinking about you. I miss you. Can we talk?" So what caused it? Was it the imagination? Or did the imagination simply align her with a reality that already existed? The truth is, those are the same thing. Alignment is causation. Now let's talk about persistence, because this is where things get real. When you're aiming for something you've labeled as impossible, it doesn't take longer because it's harder for consciousness. Consciousness doesn't deal in difficulty. It only responds to what is assumed and accepted as true. The reason it can take more time is because it requires you to fully let go of who you used to be. If you're going after a small change, you can sometimes get there with just a partial shift. Your old identity can stick around while the new belief quietly settles in. But when your desire completely contradicts what your life currently shows, like healing that goes against medical expectations, financial breakthroughs that defy logic, or reconnecting with someone after years of silence, you're not just tweaking your mindset. You're replacing your identity, and that's not instant. The old version of you doesn't disappear easily. It resists. Not because something is wrong, but because it's trying to survive. It brings up evidence, past experiences, opinions from others, and logical arguments. It points at everything that says, this can't happen. It tries to convince you to stay where you are. But here's what matters. That resistance isn't a sign you're failing. It's actually a sign you're making progress. The old identity only pushes back hard when it feels threatened. When your new assumption starts to feel real enough, strong enough, consistent enough, that's when the friction shows up. So when doubt comes, don't fight it. Don't argue with it. Don't try to win a mental battle. Just gently return to your new state, again and again. Each time you do that, you're strengthening the version of yourself who already has what you want. Every time you choose your inner knowing over what your eyes are showing you, you're reinforcing that new identity. Eventually, that new state becomes stronger than the old one. And at some point, what once felt impossible just becomes reality. Here's the practical part. At night, when you're about to fall asleep, when your mind is calm and open, create a scene. Not something where you're hoping or waiting. Create a moment that could only exist if your desire were already fully real. If it's healing, feel what it's like to move freely, to be strong, to feel alive in your body. If it's financial freedom, focus on the quiet sense of relief and stability, not excitement, but peace. If it's a relationship, imagine the conversation, the warmth, the closeness. Let it feel so real that it almost feels strange when you open your eyes and don't see it yet. Make it vivid, make it emotional, let it feel natural. Then carry that feeling into your day. Not the scene itself, but the essence of it. Walk through your life as someone for whom this is already normal. Speak, think, and make choices from that place. If someone asks how things are going, respond from that inner state, not by pretending, but by being rooted in what you know internally. This isn't about acting, it's about becoming. And here's the most important thing to understand. You are not just a person trying to use some method to get results. You are consciousness itself, creative, limitless, and powerful. Right now, you're experiencing life through a set of beliefs you've accepted over time. Those limitations you feel, they're real in your experience, but they're not permanent. They're built from repeated assumptions, and anything built from assumption can be changed. Not always instantly, not always easily, but completely. What this asks from you is courage. Not the kind that fights against circumstances, but the kind that allows you to step into a new identity before you see any proof. To feel healthy while discomfort is still there. To feel secure while money is still tight. To feel connected while silence remains. To live as the version of yourself who already has what you want, even if your current situation hasn't caught up yet. This isn't denial, it's understanding how reality actually forms. The inner world always comes first, always. Your assumptions shape your life, not the other way around. You are not powerless in your world, you are the source of it. So here's the challenge. Think of something you've labeled as impossible, something you've pushed aside or stopped believing in, and allow yourself, even just a little, to assume it's already done. You don't need perfect belief. You don't need zero doubt. You just need the willingness to return to that assumption again and again. Stay with it. Come back to it when your mind drifts. Let it deepen over time. And then watch, quietly, as things begin to shift. Not always in dramatic ways, but in precise, natural ones. You'll start to realize that what you once thought was impossible was never out of reach. It was simply waiting for you to step into it. So dare to assume. Dare to stay with it. Dare to become the version of yourself who already lives it. And let reality catch up. So understand this clearly. There is nothing in your life that is truly impossible. Only things you have not yet chosen to believe differently about. The world you see is not fixed. It is a reflection of the state you continue to occupy. The moment you dare to step into a new identity, to feel as though your desire is already complete, reality begins to reorganize itself in ways you cannot predict but cannot avoid. This is not hope, this is law. And your only task is persistence. Returning again and again to the version of yourself who already has it, already lives it, already is it. Because in the end, what you consistently assume does not remain a thought, it becomes your life.